Indie housing market. Get the latest insights right here.
Welcome back to Indie Housing Market. I'm Kyle.morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker.
And I'm Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker.
And today we have Meyer on here from, ironically, the Noblesville FC Tucker office. We did not have you on here actually because you're like FC Tucker. I don't want people to think that, by no means. Had you on for a variety of reasons. So you've been doing real estate a long time, so you're just a bevy of wisdom and knowledge. But I saw a video that you did when I was sick with COVID, and because like you're just sitting there, right? And the first one I saw, and I was telling you this, I can't remember if my friend sent it to me or if I sent it to my friend, but you did one about cars and the impact of cars on infrastructure, basically, to a certain extent. But like I really enjoyed the video because at the end of it, you're like, hey, like I'm pro car, just so you know. like I'm just having this conversation. I'm not here to be like, you know, you're not like carbon footprints that you know what I mean? Like you weren't trying to convey it in a certain manner. It was just like, this is a topic that we should discuss and look at both sides. And then I saw another video that you did, and that's the one I sent to Shelly, and I was like, we need to have Kurt on.
And I was like, I've always been watching him. I love his stuff because I am a historic home. Like,
and that's what that one was about.
I love, they all mostly were. So your car thing was a little bit off topic for you. And I wanted to know when you were going through that, saying about cars, how it affects real estate or whatever. One of the things I thought was very interesting, but you didn't really quite go into, is how cars do affect our real estate, because the 2-car garage, like my husband can't buy a truck. Like they won't fit in our garage, and all the trucks he wants won't fit. And I had a client who had in their HOA, you know how you have your 5 days to read your HOA documents. He bought a truck after he'd been living there for like 2 years, parked it in the driveway because he can't get it in his garage. And they fined him and told him that he could not have his car in a truck, not a car, a truck in the driveway. So there are HOAs out there saying no truck in the driveway. It had nothing to do with it. It was not a work truck. It was not wrapped. It had no name on it. It was his personal truck. He had to sell it.
That's crazy.
And I didn't know HOAs were that bad, but we need to watch out for our buyers. Like, what kind of car do you have? Like, I sell Sweetwater and Cordery lake homes, and the boat has to be a certain size. Now I got to ask my sellers if the car is the right size for the driveway.
Right. Yeah. I have a 3-car garage that I park 0 cars in. Right. Like, and my my current truck, it would fit into it, but my previous truck didn't because I had big tires on it and it was leveled and stuff. And I have a Fisher Home is the builder, and it's a low clearance garage, right? And like I didn't have a truck at the time, and like, I mean, I'll just never be able to park. Like I don't even know if I could get a Denali in there, quite honestly. So, but it's interesting. But so circling back to like you being on here though, so the video you were talking about was around historic homes, and you were posting about a house in Noblesville that it was going to get demoed, and like you were having a conversation about like, should this have been preserved? Is it going to be demoed for there to be new construction? Like, we don't know what's going to happen with it. Could we turn it into affordable housing? All these other things. And then I was looking in the comments, and there's a lot of discussion about, this is bullshit that, like that we're demoing these homes. And like in my head, I'm like, well, like that could be a $200,000 renovation and the profit's not there. And then at the same time, like I understand preserving it, and I just really appreciate that you're putting out conversation and content that is not divisive. It is about a conversation, right? And I just thought that was really, really good. So that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I was like, oh, if he can do that, like I would love to have you on, because that's kind of the mindset I have as well.
Well, I appreciate that. About 40% of my business every year is in historic homes in downtown Noblesville, and I always find it amazing that if a television network is doing a little look at life in Noblesville, if a magazine or newspaper is doing that, they don't go to Hamilton Town Center. They come to our downtown, our historic core, and focus on that. And that's kind of our calling card. And so it does frustrate me when I see kind of willy-nilly this house here, that house over there getting demolished, and where, even though it doesn't look great today, most of the houses and buildings that you love in Old Town Noblesville didn't look that great 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And people do keep investing in them. They keep restoring them. But if you demolish them, it's never going to have that opportunity, right?
No,
Yeah,
and the people that do it have a love for the home. They're,
Right.
like you said, does it make sense financially? I would say probably most people are not doing it for the financial gain. They're doing it because they absolutely for the love of the home.
But over my career, I don't know that many people who lost money renovating a historic home.
Yeah, because there's also a specific buyer for it, right? You know, there's some really good houses that are kind of like, they're not really historic, but they've been redone. I would say, like, historic, I want to think more like pre-1960, you know what I mean? But like over on Cherry Street and stuff like that, there's some good like 70s homes
That's
and
my
stuff like
street,
that.
yeah, but there are some, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it is an interesting thing. If you look at property values in Noblesville, I think it would be very clear that the fastest growing property values are on the lake, on Morse. But probably number 2 is Old Town Noblesville, because people that want that walkable, bikeable environment, a more traditional environment, linear streets and historic homes, that's your only option.
And where are you going to do it, right? Because like Carmel doesn't have it, Fishers doesn't have it, and if you go into downtown Indy, it's either like Old North Side and it's super expensive, and it's not as walkable because it's a much larger city, right?
Right.
So we don't really have anything like that.
I was just saying that when I lived in Noblesville, I would always just make sure I drove down the historic streets just to see the houses, I love them. And the Victorian's my favorite. And so getting inside those homes would just be like, do they have home tours about
They
them?
do. There's a historic home tour every year, and the 2 homes I've lived in on Cherry Street have been on the tour multiple times. They also do a holiday tour, so there's lots of opportunities to get.
There's
into
the
houses.
one house I always drive past that is, I want to say it's literally due east of the annex, right? And it's like this green, it's on the south-hand side of the street, and it's green and black, and it's like a Victorian, and I'm always like, I can't imagine what it's like to paint that house.
Oh, it's right next to City Hall. It's
Yeah.
The friends of mine, actually clients of mine, I've sold them multiple houses over the years, and that I just wonder, where do you find the time to do it? Because they're
keep
very
up on
hands-on.
just paint, it
They
would be
do a lot of their
insane.
own stuff, and they just keep buying another historic home and renovating it.
Oh, fun.
That house is beautiful, but
Actually-
it's got like all this trim work on the outside, and I'm like, there's all these spindles, and like even if you just paint a deck railing that has spindles, it is a
The
whole
multiple colors.
And
oh my
that
gosh,
house is all wood, man.
it
It's
is
all wood.
and it's in great shape, and it's because somebody took care of it, right? But like I notice that house every single time I go by it, you know, like there's just some really pretty houses up there. And I always, you know, you and I have a mutual friend, and with the wards, we were talking about that, and I know that she was always involved in the kind of historic committee, and so I guess I just always assumed that there was a historic district up there, and you were telling me that there actually is not a formalized district. There's a committee, but there's not an actual district.
Yeah, there's a preservation group, the Noblesville Preservation Alliance, and I always call them the kind of de facto HOA of Old Town, though we don't really have an HOA. They look out for Old Town's interests, and I sat on that board for maybe 20 years and was president of that group for about 10 years. But yeah, we have National Register of Historic Places districts, but that's kind of an honorary designation, and the only person that's restricted with that is governmental agencies that are using federal tax dollars. Give you an example, the Pleasant Street project was just completed, nearly completed in Noblesville, and it cut through a neighborhood from the 1880s, 1890s. That neighborhood hurried, got themselves put on the National Register of Historic Places. Pleasant Street was being built in part with matching federal dollars. So now the city had to do an impact study and say, are we negatively impacting the historic fabric of that neighborhood? And they had to change the route of the road.
Really?
But there's no restriction for a homeowner. You could buy a house in a National Register Historic District and demolish it.
That's crazy.
Just
I
meet
think
whatever the
that's-
city's guidelines
I hate
are.
to hear that because I thought that the preservation committees were to preserve.
You have to have a historic preservation ordinance adopted by the city, and the state has model language for cities to adopt. And there's just a process that Noblesville has never completely gone through. And it's really a shame because it's funny, I've fought for this over the years, and when I've had people at plan commission meetings or city council meetings say, well, what you want is too restrictive. I'm asking for a one-page document with 10 protections written out on it. I want to call them protections and not rules because that's how I perceive it. And the people are telling me it's too restrictive. live in an HOA with an 80-page set of rules telling them what color they can paint their mailbox,
And
or
they're
they
fine
can't
with
park
it.
a truck
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in their
Right.
driveway. So they accepted that, but I can't have my list of 10 things that would protect my neighborhood because it's too restrictive.
And one of the things you were saying is like, what if happens if the house burns down? What can be built there? And I was
Right.
like, never even on my radar.
Right.
Like, you're not even talking about super controlling invasive stuff. It's just like, hey, if this happens, what do we do, right?
So, like, if somebody would go in, and I'm just trying to learn this because, like I said, I watched your videos, and you really have mentioned many times about not having any really protection. I was shocked to see. So let's just say one of those beautiful, the Victorian you're talking about, the person who comes in, and since it's right there on the main drag, if it's got a person purchasing it, and they wanted to do something else with it or have another house built on there, they could just literally tear that down.
Well, we have had an ordinance passed that takes the main corridor of Connor Street in Noblesville and bumps a half a block east or north and south, and then goes down and encircles the historic courthouse square. And we call that an anti-demolition ordinance. But all it really does is say if you want to demolish something in that zone, it first has to go to the Plan Commission and get a recommendation from them, and then it has to go to the City Council for a vote. And that's relatively new. It's only existed for a couple of years. And sadly, the first building that was brought up, it was a building right on our courthouse square. The council voted unanimously to let it be demolished by the county. And I don't know the details of that. But there is at least that in place for a very narrow part of Old Town Noblesville.
Which makes me wonder,
Right.
like what you just answered was, will it still go by and will it still pass? Like
Right,
there's
right.
no rules.
And I would say there's another property in that very zone, and I know that the owner wants to demolish it, and he met with opposition when he started through the process, and he backed away from the process, but he now is executing what I would say demolition by neglect. He is doing nothing to the property. Simply, you go by and you see holes in the siding, you see things rotting, you see the gutters are full and not being emptied, and I think that's intentional. He's gonna let it fall apart to the point where he says, "Hey, you got to let me tear this down because now it would
Because
be
nothing
too
else I can do
expensive to
with it."
renovate."
Yeah.
Well,
Which
and
is-
if we just go on beyond him being like that, if you're going to tear it down, the other thing I'm always curious about that I don't think I see is the preservation of what's inside. Like the beautiful mantles, the staircases, windows, glass led windows, everything like that. Do you see that anybody ever cares about that?
You know, in the preservation world across the country, and I've been involved with Indiana Landmarks in years past and sat on committees with them. Across the nation, historic protections tend not to ever address what's inside the house. Like that's just too far to go, and most people don't want you commenting on what's inside their house. It's usually what faces the street, and sometimes not even if you're at the back of your house can't be seen from the surrounding streets. Sometimes that's not even protected. It's just what can be viewed from the street.
Yeah, but like, I'm glad that there are people out there and property owners and businessmen who want to. I don't know. They just want to protect that stuff. Like I think of the mill, right? Like I think that was really well done.
It's a cool building.
Yeah, it's just, and I would have. I mean, considering the growth that Noblesville has seen, like makes complete sense to demo it and throw up apartments. Like, I mean, it's just more cost effective than to have like an event center and commercial
But
space or whatever.
he's doing a great business there. It's a big
He is.
economic impact for that area.
It is, and I can't imagine what that renovation cost him.
Right.
And at the time he was doing it before, I would argue Noblesville was where it is right now. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like
That
he was
owner's a
definitely-
dreamer.
Yeah, he's a
He's a
visionary
real dreamer
for sure.
and a visionary. Yeah.
And so when we talk about that, and we talk about, we're talking about this guy, and he did this thing, and it worked out, and it brought all this value to downtown. But then, like one of our podcasts, like we were discussing the growth of Noblesville, and as I mean, we got eviscerated, because we were talking about Noblesville's going to have to grow because Carmel and Fishers, it's just expanding and it's just going to bleed up. And Noblesville has a great school system, and it's the county
has
seat.
land.
It has land. I mean, it has all these things. And then you have a lot of people who have lived in Noblesville for 30, 40 years, and their families generationally, and they want to keep this small town feel. And I was like, I love that for you, but it's just not going to happen. And what ends up happening is they want to fight it instead of being involved with how to aim it better.
Right.
And like you're just never, I'm from Martinsville, and I watched this happen. progress will run you over.
Right.
Like, that's just the reality of it. Money just matters. It talks, and sooner or later, it's just going to happen. And like, I wish there was a better effort to be involved and help guide instead of prevent, because you're just not going to be able to.
I think you make a great point about how can you get involved to guide that growth so it reflects the kind of growth you would like to see. The writer Ogden Nash had a line that I love, that progress was a good idea. It just went on too long. And
That's a lot.
one of the things that I think has been a problem for people in Noblesville, and there's been lots of opposition to things lately, is there's so much happening, and I think people get exhausted. If it were just that one development, it would be different. But it's that development and 2 road projects, and I can't get where I'm going, and they cut down all those trees to run a road through it, and it's just so much all at once that I think people get exhausted and overwhelmed with it. Yeah. And so if it were coming in bite sizes where they could accept it in increments, it would be different. But that's part of what the city leaders are having to deal with, right?
Well, and then on top of that, when you see that much of it, I mean, we're all taxpayers. At a certain point, you'll be like, who's paying for this? Right. Like, there's a lot going on here.
I was shocked at Pleasant Street when I first drove down it when it was finished, because, again, I used to live there when it was, a much smaller, quiet town, and that was a lot.
Right.
That went through a lot.
Huge project.
Yeah.
I love Noblesville. Noblesville, it reminds me of where I grew up, except for on the north side. It just really does. The lake as a whole, personal opinion, it's smaller than Geist, but it's the nicer lake. It's a cleaner lake. It's less, historically it's been less of a party lake. I think it's kind of turning into a little bit of a party lake. But, I can remember when I was first up there, you had North Harbor, you had Oak Bay, and all this other stuff. Like, to see South Harbor, some of those shoreline homes and what they've done with that, and I'm like, this is
They
insane.
have some really cool historic homes on there too. A lot of really neat.
Seeing the reinvestment there as people take homes that were built in the late 70s, early 80s, completely reimagining them. That's kind of fun.
Because that's a different architecture. It really is. We aren't seeing that anymore. And I know a lot of times when they're being sold, there's still a time capsule, and you either stay that way or you update it a little bit. But South Harbor has some really cool architecture as well. The downtown Noblesville Square has changed quite a bit too, to make it a much more like place to be, because that did not used to be the way it was. You went into the courthouse and left for whatever reason you needed to. But so, and to me it reminds me of Franklin a lot. We really don't have a lot of towns that, to me. So does Franklin, do you know, or how are they preserving there? Do they have their own?
I think they have a great reputation. I know when I sat on Indiana Landmarks Revolving Loan Committee, we would loan money to preservation groups that were trying to save structures from being demolished or damaged. We would have routine meetings in Franklin, and they have for 30 years been kind of on the forefront of reinvesting in their community, making a safe, bikeable, walkable community, and that art craft theater that they have in their
love
downtown.
that. Mm-hmm.
We've lost both of our old theaters in Noblesville long ago, but the fact that they have that Art Deco gem, and I will tell you, we're getting ready to do a new streetscape plan in Noblesville. The first phase of that will start next month, where they are going to completely dig up the street. They're going to replace all the infrastructure. We're going to see sidewalks widen to have more outdoor dining and so forth, because we have parking garages downtown now, so we don't need as much street parking. Mm-hmm. People are going to comment and say, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I maintain that issue, that side of the issue. But be that as it may, when that program was first presented to the public in a forum this past fall, the city of Noblesville brought people from Franklin to say, hey, merchants, here's what we experienced. Hey, motors, here's what we experienced. So to have somebody who had already been through this to be able to kind of take our hand a little bit and help us understand, that was fabulous. And they've been great partners.
And what street is that?
It's going to be, the first phase of that will only happen this year. It'll start in February. It'll end by November, because the city wants it done before Christmas shopping. Mm-hmm. But that will go from 8th Street, so people know where Sid's is. So that whole intersection of 8th and Logan, and then going down to 9th and Logan. People know where Smith Jewelers is and the new Courthouse Club restaurant. So that city block will be done, and there's going to be a little leg of improvement done down 8th Street. King Jug Brewery Bar in Fishers is opening a new location a block from Sid's. And so the city is going to be doing some infrastructure improvements there, and also county employees walk from the courthouse and the judicial center to their parking garage down 8th Street. And there's a lot of safety issues with pedestrians and motorists getting tangled up. So they're going to try and improve that situation and make that safer as well.
There's, I mean, just everything on the Riverwalk, so to speak, all of that stuff that was done. You know, my wife's first job was at Riverview Hospital being a lunch lady. You know what I mean, in high school, and my mother-in-law worked at Riverview for forever, and everything that they've done, over where Brewburger is, and all of that stuff. Like, there's just so much, to your point, being done.
The park is fabulous.
Right.
I love Forest Park.
You know, something that I see happening now that I'm really excited to see happen. I was the first president of Noblesville Main Street back in the early 90s, and this was the Economic Redevelopment Group for the Courthouse Square. And the first year you're a Main Street group, you get consultation from the National Trust of Historic Preservation. They have a division that does nothing but travel the country and try and figure out, why is that historic downtown surviving? Why is that one failing? And then they come and advise you for a year on what you're doing well and not doing well. Blew my mind the first time those folks came and toured Noblesville, early 90s again. They said, you guys see your river completely wrong. You see the river as the edge of your downtown, and you should reimagine it as the middle of your downtown and redevelop that west side to be more urban. Put the buildings right up on the sidewalk. They can put their parking behind. Make it feel like a continuation and have as many pedestrian, access points across that river as possible. And you see in bits and pieces, Noblesville is doing that.
Yeah, I love Mayor Jensen. I think he's been really, really good. You and I were talking about that. You said he helped you learn how to have more productive conversations around hey, I agree or I disagree and all this other stuff, because I do think he actually does care what other people's opinions are. But I also think he understands the growth and what is going to have to happen there, because being somebody who, like I said, is from Martinsville, I've also watched, the city I grew up in die.
Yeah.
That's just, when they took the highway through there,
Split it in two.
It's not just that, what ended up happening is we had lost, some of our employers with Twigs and some of all this other stuff. And we never kind of grabbed hold of kind of trying to grow a little bit. And then when they went through, first of all, the highway's going to do what the highway does. And they got rid of 4 of our exits, and then more businesses died. And so instead of being a city that you stop in on the way to Bloomington, it's the city that you basically drive over on the way to Bloomington now. And they have in the past 10 years worked on revitalizing downtown. And because the town kind of avoided being progressive, there's a lot of money that went into downtown that people will never see, because they just are going to drive right through the city, because there's only 2 exits really to get off at anymore. So, and I don't know what's going to happen to the town, quite honestly. I just don't. The only thing it will become is a commuter city to Indianapolis, quite honestly. It will not have its own identity the way a Noblesville does. And that's the other way that it goes.
Right. I think we're so fortunate.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We're so fortunate.
Well, I think that the courthouse is gorgeous. I mean, that's a building that, I know would never be coming down, but they've, always saved all of those buildings are all around the corner square.
Well, there are 2 people, and I love that they're still active in the community. But when I was young and first involved in Noblesville's community, Steve Dillinger was a county commissioner, a fairly new county commissioner. He's still a county commissioner today, but he was one of those commissioners that said there were some people saying, hey, move the courthouse somewhere else. Actually, there was a very prominent realtor at the time in the early 90s who was saying, demolish that rotten old courthouse and we'll put parking here for merchants. But Steve Dillinger is one of those people that said, no, we're going to restore that courthouse. And that was pivotal, because that's kind of like the mall anchor of downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And then
It's the county seat. anchor,
Exactly.
right?
And that courthouse is beautiful, designed by the same architect that did the State House in Indy. But also at the same time, our mayor was Mary Sue Rowland, and she brought
I
the Main
remember
Street
that.
group to town. She pushed preservation. She pushed the rehab of buildings on the courthouse square when people thought it was a waste of time and money. And so you have those two visionary people who were in positions of leadership at the same time, and they didn't agree a lot, but that they both pushed for things that are vital for how successful downtown is now.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see how it all goes because it's gonna keep growing, and like there's just nowhere else for Indy to go but out. And like they already have infrastructure plans for 2050. Like out by where I live in McCordsville, there's always been this talk that Fortville Pike is meant to be like the outer loop of 465, kind of like a Dallas has, right? Where they have two loops or whatever. Houston, I think, actually. People have to think that way, and like it or not, I've always wondered why Cicero didn't grow. Like Cicero's my favorite town because it reminds me of an 80s movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like people are like walking around. It's got the little place on the lake. It's got the pizza place. It's got the pasta place. It's got the ice cream place.
It's got one of the
burger
nicest small
place.
town grocery stores I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's amazing. You got the barbecue place.
They're all out there going, shh.
Yeah,
Quit,
and so
don't.
that's the problem is people don't want. They have that amazing park out there.
But I think they're on the cusp. We're starting to see some growth there, and I think we'll continue to see that.
Well, it's
So-
just like Sheridan. We
They've
never
got-
thought we'd talk about Sheridan,
Exactly.
And Lebanon, they're pushing it to Lebanon now. So it's going to keep
Pittsburgh.
pushing. I mean, when I lived in Zionsville, they were trying to keep it at 3,000. This is years and years ago, but they said we can't grow past 3,000, and they would have very small permits allowed. Like they had a very limited permit per year. So that would be something that is never going to be seen again, because I can't imagine how many permits are pulled in all of these growing towns right now, that there's really no control on permits. It's just go, that neighborhood's okay, so let's do that neighborhood. And like you said, kind of a lot happening at once, and how do you control the people who live in Noblesville to just say, one step at a time, get involved. If you really think you should be saying something, quit being negative, just be involved.
Well, and I think a part of what the current mayor and council is dealing with is previous to Chris Jensen. I think our city hall was a little sleepy and not very aggressive about tackling issues. And he's a roll up your sleeves and get busy kind of person. Let's take care of things. So what I appreciate, I'm a person who worries about the pace of growth, but I think that the leadership at the city now, and I'm not just talking about the mayor's office, but also the city council, they've really been focused on quality of life issues. You're seeing parks being focused on, the trail system being focused on, things of that nature, which is vital to making the growth palatable. Right?
Yeah.
So-
Carmel is so dense. But when you drive around, you're like, oh, this kind of looks nice. It's so, and Fisher's has started to do that, and I just think there's a way to do it. And it's like, how do you take like what Carmel or Fisher's did, but make it feel older and slower with the same thing, and get more of like that Franklin vibe or so. And there's places that do it. And I know Mayor Jensen talks to other mayors, and, they've tried to figure all that stuff out. When we talk about going north, it's in Cicero, and I have some people who live that I help, a couple of clients that went to Sheridan, and I think I was telling you about this the other day, Shelly. So there's a development up there, and they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna keep building up there, this builder or whatever, but I got a phone call from my client because I can't remember if it was his water bill or his gas bill was like $500 a month. Water bill is his water bill. And like Anderson has some really high utilities, and it's really hard to bring a bunch of people there, and then your utilities are that high because you aren't built up around the infrastructure for it to be
Or
able
for
to
us,
handle
like
it.
you said, we talked about us as realtors, to not have that on our radar, that some of these outgrowing neighborhood or towns might have this issue, like $500 water bill. Like, we really need to look into these newer areas and what's the living ability like?
Right.
Like what are they going to come into, because this town is growing so much that we don't even know what to look into.
That's
So
where
we got to be
out
careful.
by where I live, I think that's going to happen. I don't know what other areas you think. I like. I think all of us have been around here long enough. Like, I never imagined that there would be $2 million homes at like 191st and Tomlinson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Up at Chatham. And so I see a lot of custom homes being built over there off of like Prairie Baptist and stuff. And like, I really like that area over there. And I sooner or later, somebody's going to figure that out. Right. And instead of where we're building north, and like, I think they're going to start to go east a little bit, east of 37, because there's a lot of space over there, actually.
Well, Deer Creek was out in the middle of nowhere.
Dude.
When that was put out there, I mean, the last thing I knew was I used to do theater at the little church there, and I can't think of the name of it.
Belfry.
Yes, the Belfry. So I did theater there, and that was like driving to I don't know where. Like, it was dark the whole way there. Yeah. And then they said they were going to put, Deer Creek out there. It's like, these are two things nobody's going to ever come to. Like, how do people even want to come to the play? And now I pass by the Belfry, surprised it still stands there.
Right.
Very surprised. And of course, we know what happened to Deer Creek. It's surrounded by a brand new mall. I mean, we're going to be old and gone. Who knows what's going to be changing as it's changing? Is we sound like a bunch of 3 old people going, I remember when, but I do, and it's not been that long ago.
Well, you think of the issues that the two of you have just been talking about. One of the hidden realities about development that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and I'm kind of a land planning nerd, and I'll watch documentaries about it, read books about it. For most communities, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, and the demographics of the people who will likely live there with their children going to school, needing fire and police service, sewer, water, snow removal in the streets, pick up the leaves in the autumn. That house probably consumes more in resources, dollar resources from the city than their property taxes pay for.
Yep.
And so it's the commercial development that comes to your community that balances
Offsets
that
it.
out. And so if a town's not getting enough commercial development, the residents are going to have to pay that full bill, and it gets expensive. And so you've got to have a balance. And right there, I just exhausted my knowledge on the topic, because I don't know how you bring businesses to, how you promote that. That's a special kind of
you
land
have to
planner.
incentivize them and everything. And I know I've heard Mayor Brainerd speak, and one of the things that he did that really helped this town is, most of their parking is below grade, right? Which is like it's way more expensive to build, but it also increased the tax rate significantly. And so it looks prettier. It's more expensive to build, but you may look at a building and you're like, oh, it's probably worth this much, and it's actually worth 4 times that much because of all the parking that's underneath.
And it allows all that dense urban environment that creates this fun, festive atmosphere. I was thinking about that when I was at their Christmas mart, and you think, this could not happen if it was parking for the businesses around here, the housing around here, the parking.
Yeah.
Hallmark movie.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife is in the scrapbooking business, and she hosts a couple of big events every year in Noblesville. One during the Peony Festival, and one the weekend of our Christmas parade. And 130 women from all over the country will come to scrapbook with her for a weekend, staying in the Airbnbs and the hotels and eat at the restaurants. And she holds these in downtown Noblesville. And when people are leaving, they always say, we feel like we came to the set of a Hallmark movie.
That's awesome.
And we start to take for granted
We need to
what
call
we have.
Hallmark. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to call Hallmark. Get out here. Probably we don't, because then the growth will be worse.
Well, we have that, and then I think that's one of the things that we were talking about, that when Mayor Jensen was on here, that I think people took issue with is we have it, it's beautiful, it's perfect, and then we want to keep it to ourselves, which is the worst thing you could ever do. It's like, this is mine, not yours. You would want to share it, or you'll lose it. Like, you just
But
will
back
lose
to
it.
your point about managing the growth and making value judgments to make it better, maybe slow it down a little bit. Maybe that's one of the things you decide. We're going to go at a little lower, speed, and we're going to focus on quality.
And this is the year of parks. You know what I mean, or something like that.
Yeah. Have you ever considered being on the city council?
I thought about running for office. I don't know if I would ever do that. Over the years, I was very civically active in my 30s and 40s, and I developed kind of an aversion to meetings. And when I'm in any kind of a meeting, I'm trying to figure out how I can get out of it.
Yeah.
And so that might be one of the things that hold me back. And I'll be very honest, too. If I ran, I would run as a Democrat. And so I have to decide, do I want to fight that battle in Hamilton County? So we'll see. I might actually do it.
So
You'd be so good at it.
personal
You-
opinion,
with
if
what
you're
you
going to
do.
do it, it'd be the next cycle. It'd be the time to do it.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
We'll
Because,
see.
yeah.
The representative of my neighborhood does a great job. I would never run against him. If I ran for office, I'd probably run at large. So, yeah.
Here's the thing. If you're in charge of the meetings, you get to decide how long they last.
Oh, right. I'm actually really good at organizing a meeting. So when people starts talking about what they're going to have for dinner tomorrow, I love that. That's great. Let's talk about that after the meeting. Now, what were we on? What agenda point are we on now?
I think you would be fabulous from everything you're saying. And back to what you told us earlier, too, was you were a school teacher before all of this. So
Right.
that's a great background to have with.
What'd you teach?
I taught graphic arts and photography, and my students ran the school newspaper. And this was in Henry County. I drove from Noblesville to Shenandoah High School. So what I loved is that my kids would write the stories for the school newspaper. They would do the graphic layout. They would do all the printing prep. They would print it. They would fold it. They would distribute it. They did the whole thing. And that what was fun about it not being in the English department, but being in the graphic arts department. We got to do the whole thing.
Do they still do that in schools anymore?
I doubt
don't
it.
know.
I remember
It's
that
all
when I was
online
growing
and
up.
Yeah, probably an
everything,
online
so-
version. Yeah.
Well, I think around the time I started, like we had a newspaper, but then they kind like I know that at my son's school and stuff, like they have like a news show.
Oh,
now,
right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Car-
a big deal now.
Carmel had a TV station and a
station.
radio station, yeah.
I have a good buddy and a
Has-
real estate client who teaches that in a school. Teaches
Yeah.
the audiovisual side of things.
This
that's
is
what I went
off
to
topic.
college for. Yeah.
I was in telecommunications.
That's what I was. That's what my degree is.
That's funny.
I sell real estate.
So no
I know.
surprise that you guys have this program.
That's true. We've never said that to each other. That's so funny. I was just leaving my house the other day, and I was driving away, and I saw a newspaper in the front yard of my neighbor's house, and I'm like, oh, I have not seen that in years.
Man,
years.
I like reading a newspaper.
Me too. I used
really
to every
do.
morning.
Because you would end up reading just like dumb stuff too, right? Because you're just like, this is what you're doing.
You
and
read the
like,
whole page,
yeah,
every page.
You just sit there with your coffee and like that's what I thought it was like to become an adult. It's like
Right,
you
right.
get to drink your coffee
And read the
and read the
newspaper.
newspaper.
Yeah.
And now I'm like energy drinks and I'm looking at my apps.
Right. Well, I have a buddy who's had a subscription to the New York Times, and he's in our coffee group. And Monday mornings, he brings me the Sunday Times. That's a week worth of reading right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all interesting, especially since like you did that stuff or whatever. You know, people are very, oh gosh, I want to say very critical that everything is biased, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who like went to school for that, it always has been. You just found out. That's
Right,
the
right.
only difference
Right.
about it. You know, it's always been a small group of people that basically influenced and organized any kind of editorial. That's just how it's always been. So,
Well, let's talk about why we both said we wanted to talk to you, is how we found you with
Okay.
your videos, and tell us how you started and the handle and all that stuff.
Well, I think when we were chatting in the office earlier, I mentioned that back early in my real estate career, and because I taught graphic arts and photography, I had awesome printed materials, and they were mine. They didn't look like anybody else's. I created them
wondered where you
myself.
got those.
And so, like the flyer boxes that were out in front of houses 20, 30 years ago, I would pick up so much business from that because I had really useful information in there, not just about that house, but about the neighborhood and the community and so forth. And, that just ceased to be a way that we promote houses anymore, right?
Yeah.
We do it all online. And interestingly, I had my biggest year ever in real estate in 2020. And then 2021, I sold 1/3 less. And I'm like crying in my Wheaties one morning, talking to my wife about like, what am I doing wrong? And she's like, you know what? You need to hit social media hard. You've been civically active. So mine the past, like a miner in a coal mine. Go back and look for those chunks of things that you've learned, things you've experienced, and start talking about that. People share that with people as it relates to the community, as it relates to housing, buying and selling homes. And kind of the light bulb went off because I'd been kind of half-hearted about social media. I'd maybe post something on my business page once a week. And then I committed to doing it every single day. And there was so much I could talk about. And you mentioned my series about automobiles. That's what I'm going to do this year. Probably every 2 weeks, I'll do something about the bargain we've made with cars and how we could do it better, whether it's architecture, whether it's how we build roads, how we build our community. So, yeah, and what's amazing is the start of about a year ago right now, I had 2,200 followers on Facebook. And I started doing a thing where I have a big collection of historic photographs, and I would hold up an 8x10 and holding my phone, I would capture that image and pull it away, and you'd see what that spot looks like now.
That's
and
my favorite.
It's a beautifully restored house. Sometimes it's a parking lot where a beautiful house used to be.
Yeah.
But I posted one of a young woman, and I have a friend who's an expert in clothing, historic clothing, and she said, that dress was really popular in 1897. So that's how I dated the picture. And it's a woman sitting in a chair on a front porch of a house that I've sold 3 times in my career. And I pull it away, and you're seeing a modern chair sitting in that exact same spot. You see the same house in the background. And that went viral last March, and it's been viewed 2.5 million times by people. And so my follower base just grew exponentially. And so, one of the results of that is I do get business where, I've had 2 calls in the last week from people I don't know. They say, I follow your content. It seems like you know what you're talking about. Could you come talk about selling my house?
You're like, yes, I do know
That's
what
right.
I'm talking about. I promise.
Right. And so, so it's just funny how we have to change. I'm 65 years old, and I didn't want to do videos. I remember 10 years ago hearing people say, we'd go to sales meetings, marketing meetings, like, you got to start doing content. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do it. And now, got my little selfie stick. I'll walk out in a road project and go, what's going to happen in this neighborhood, and this road is done. It's going to be awesome. And it feels natural now. It feels normal.
Yeah, it looks very normal. I hate
it because I'm like, man, I got to do video.
I was just curious where you did get all those pictures because,
it's a hobby.
It's a long time ago.
I've really been into I love old photos, and I've done a lot of writing that tends to be about history. But so I had that collection that was accumulated on my computer, and then about 15 years ago, an antique dealer let me digitize a collection of about 350 photographs, most of them taken in my neighborhood in the 1890s,
Wow.
and most of them around a couple of families. And so for those, I talked to the grandchildren who are elderly now of the people in the photographs who send me messages, hey, that's my uncle, or
that's
my
crazy.
great uncle, or that's my great grandmother in that photograph, and their little children in the photograph. Mm-hmm. So that's fun to be able to bring those in, because I think, as I said earlier, about 40% of my business every year is historic homes, and so I'm in that world all the time.
Well, people lived before us,
right.
And that's why I think maybe it probably went viral. Is it's always fun to see who's here before us.
Right.
It's a human interest for sure.
Right.
That's a massive amount. 40% is historical.
Yeah,
that's
40% of my business every year, is historic homes. And so anyway, I went from 2,200 followers, where I'm approaching 32,000 followers on Facebook right now. That's a mixed bag. There's good in that, but as we talked earlier, I'm not selling widgets I can mail around the country or around the world. I have people following me from all over the world. I'm trying to sell houses in Hamilton County. Yeah. So there is managing all of that, the comments, and sometimes the inappropriate comments, and the people who are trolling just to have fun, who get joy out of doing that, having to block people who make inappropriate comments and things of that nature. A funny one, I had a historic photograph, again, a house I've sold multiple times, 1890s photograph of the family on the front porch. I hold up the picture, I take it away, you see the house now. And then I go back to the historic photo and point out that in the windows, there's an American flag in this 1890s picture and a Cuban flag in the window next to it. Oh, and that was in the Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
And so much as we see people flying Ukrainian flags now in solidarity with them, same sort of thing then. Well, an argument starts between the Cuban and the Puerto Rican community, because Puerto Rican people were saying, no, that's a Puerto Rican flag. I'm like, no. So they're arguing back and forth, and then I have to come and kind of mediate that, because I don't want to just delete all that and silence people. But why am I doing this? I sell real estate. I don't,
Yeah. Like, I have an inspection response.
The Puerto Ricans eventually accepted that was a Cuban flag. Their flags are very similar.
That's so funny. But you are doing something. What is the name of it, or how can people find that?
Kurt Meyer Real Estate is how you would find me on Facebook or on Instagram.
Okay.
Look for
And
that,
that's your
do a search,
Facebook and your
and
Instagram.
You would pop up and find that, and you could probably do that on YouTube and find my YouTube channel. And I just take that content and load it there. So
So
that people can find it.
Meyer.
Meyer, and it's Kurt, the correct spelling.
Now,
I have a question for you real quick on top of that then. Has your whole career been with FC Tucker?
No. Actually, the most recent before and after photo I showed was of a house in downtown Noblesville that now has a bakery in it called Debbie's Daughters. And I started selling real estate part-time. My first 8 years were part-time with a gentleman named Dale Snelling, who was a realtor and for decades was a youth football coach. He drove school buses. But anyway, he taught me real estate. I would leave my classroom and I would go to the real estate office and work there for a few hours every day and on Saturdays and Sundays. And then when I decided to go full-time in real estate, I went with FC Tucker. And that was a very clear decision because I had noticed over the years my cross transactions with people from different companies, there was a unified behavior.
From Tucker Agent.
Right.
Yeah.
Low drama. Very professional, and I realized, okay, this is a company culture. Obviously, their training must be really good. And so when I went with Tucker, I took the training as if I knew nothing about real estate. I went to every single session. I took no attitude that I knew anything better than anybody else.
Yeah, it's very true, though. It's very true.
Yeah, I've never been anywhere else. She has been, and she here, left, came back, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I feel like I got really lucky because, I'm not trying to make this some like pro Tucker thing or whatever, but like, I feel very passionately about it, like that it's just different. And like the amount of wisdom and knowledge I get from both of you guys, that are just as at my fingertips, and it's just different, in my opinion. And I stumbled backwards into it. I interviewed here. I had plans to go to a bunch of other places. I had a friend here, and like it just the vibe, the culture, the professionalism,
Right.
like, but also like that people weren't stuck like rigid or stuffy, I guess.
Well, and you think too that this industry is primed for conflict.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
competing with each other, and you may have a buyer and I have a seller who have to come to agreement. But the culture here is cooperative, and I really like that too. There's nobody trying to figure out how to take somebody else's business. Everybody seems to be focused on how let's raise everybody's boat in the water at the same
It's good
time.
for all of us.
Right,
Very
right.
true.
Because the less of the other type of stuff you deal with, the better we all are, the more professional and the better we perform. And that doesn't, there's a misnomer when people like say you can cooperate. That doesn't mean I can't negotiate, and that doesn't mean I can't represent my clients to its fullest. It's just that I know how to convey that information of a difference of opinion in a professional and productive manner.
Right.
That's all it really means.
Exactly.
So. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're on here. We can go through the stats real quick to what you and I kind of briefly talked about, and we talked about it in the last podcast because we had taken like a month off. The past 2 weeks, I've seen a pretty serious uptick. Now, I don't think it's been happening long enough to call it a trend, but it's definitely happened. We've got a little cold streak here. It's going to continue through the week, so it'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend and stuff. In Fishers, I had 26 go on the market in the week, anywhere from 214 to 1.1. 18 of those are still on the market, so 8 pinned within a week time frame, but I had 30 pinned. So once again, I'm losing inventory. I have 182 on the market. Average days has trickled down a little bit, as you can kind of tell from the past 2 weeks or whatever. So I'm at like 45. Noblesville, I had 20 go on the market, anywhere from 160 to 1.5 million, and 15 of those pinned. 5 pinned within a week time frame, but 33 actually pinned. So we ate up a bunch more stale inventory. And I have 173 on the market, and my average days is 56. So we're still kind of like, I think I'll look real quick. I was north of 60 on both. Yeah, I was like 66. I was pushing 70. So I know it sounds like we're close to 60 days on market, but like I'm dropping, I dropped 10 and 15 days in a week. Now, obviously that's, you could have one that's like really, really old. So like it comes off market, it'll adjust your average days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But my bigger concern is in what we would usually see as a slow period, we're losing inventory, not gaining inventory. And that is a relatively new phenomenon, I would say, that we have not seen in months, absolute months.
Well, it's interesting, all these towns set side by side to see how they all act differently. So with Carmel, 28 hit the market. Only 7 of those pended in a total of 18. So we gained inventory. So Carmel is getting active inventory coming on. The average days on market for the ones that pended was 58 and median was 23. So we're sitting at about 2 months for the past 7 days. And the solds for the past 30 days was 64 with an average day of 38. So it was 1 month. It's moved up to 2 months in the past 7 days. And then if we look at all the active inventory in Carmel, they're sitting at 3 months, 96 average days on market. There's 147 sitting. So there's a lot of stale inventory sitting out there.
That's interesting. So I have less inventory in Carmel than Noblesville or Fishers. And I have, 40% higher days on market or so. I mean, that's just me making up a number, but like historically speaking, we would kind of see those flip-flopped. It's kind of interesting.
Well, it's showing that, to me, it's just showing the last 30 days it was 1 month. That was Christmas.
Yeah.
Now the last 7 days is 2 months, all the ones that came off the market. So they only have old inventory to grab. And then the ones sitting there right now at 147 total houses is at 96. So we're over 3 months of just active inventory sitting there. So it's showing that the inventory is sitting and we aren't getting as much inventory on the market, but it is January.
What part do you think new builds are playing in those houses sitting on the existing homes sitting on the market?
Carmel, not very much. Westfield,
we
big
actually
time.
separate it, especially
when
when we
I-
start getting into spring market.
Yeah, when I look at Westfield, it's definitely there's two houses to sell, new builds or not. The main thing that's happening in Westfield is if you have purchased your new home in the past 2 months, you're bringing money to the table almost every time. Talked to a couple of agents in here in the neighborhood that we're dealing with, myself as included, in Westfield there is a glut of new build. The homes, there's specific neighborhoods where builders want to get out of, and we're seeing huge incentives from the builder.
That's what I'm seeing as
Sellers
well,
sellers cannot compete with that. I mean, my one area is we're looking at about a $20,000 incentive they would need to do for the buy down and everything like that. That if you are in this market, it's time. I was just talking to Julie Hurdle about this in our office. When you're sitting down, I've been starting since 2008, and one of the conversations you had in 2008, 9, and 10, and 11 is you always do a net sheet, right? I haven't talked to anybody at all since 2012. Are you prepared to bring money to the table?
Right.
And that's back, and that's very interesting. My son works for a wholesaler. He said the amount of foreclosures they're seeing right now is really going up. Those are two things I'm concerned about what our market's heading towards is the glut of new build out there. Like they caught up, right? Remember they didn't have enough? Mm-hmm. Now they caught up, went fast, and now they're like, oh, what do we do with all this inventory?
Well, that was my social media post today was about the increase in foreclosures across the country.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're seeing credit card debt go up as well. And
Yes.
I think those two are really linked.
I've been getting calls about people fearful of foreclosure since right around Thanksgiving.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a market I don't think we expected to see because it's been 5 years of great, fast, but 23 slowed down, 24 slowed down, 25 slowed down, and now what market are we heading into? I don't know, but as an agent, you need to be paying attention to that net sheet the second you sit down and talk to them,
right.
Especially if they've only been in the house. But you never know, too, if they've been in the house for 5 or 10 years, have they done a home equity line of credit?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's out there. I just want to bring that up.
Sometimes there's they've rolled forbearance that's included in that. Like there's just a bunch, and this is such a complicated topic to even address. And we've done it a little bit in the past. This isn't even necessarily a housing problem. This is. I was talking to somebody about it over the weekend, and I was telling them about I was seeing an uptick in foreclosures. And they're like, oh, is it because houses are so expensive? I was like, no, I got people getting qualified left and right. It's not a debt to income ratio when you look at what they owe because of their liabilities. It's the cost of daily living is why people can't afford housing. It's because
The
gas,
utilities at
groceries.
$500 a month.
Right, utilities and groceries are huge. Right?
Yeah, I mean, to get, I got a wife, 2 kids. For me to get pizza, $80 minimum. You know,
And that used to be the cheap dinner, right?
yeah, and it's just crazy. And so it's like on paper, people qualify, so they're getting houses, and then like they can't live, and it's not because the house. I mean, I get it, houses are expensive, but interest rates are like 5.9 right now. Like it's low. It's because everything else is expensive. You know, how many people do you know that have $1,000 car payment? You know, like it's all this other stuff. And I get it, it's everything. So yes, houses are in there, but you know, I think people want to blame us or the real estate market and housing, and this is a much bigger situation than we have a housing bubble or something like that.
I think it's just catching up.
An economic problem here.
It's starting to catch up. They've talked about
it
it,
is.
but it seems to be catching up. So Westfield, like you're talking about, new builds is a big deal in Westfield. 22 hit the market. Only 3 of those pended. A total of 19 pended. 92 days on market. So they're at 3 months for the past 7 days. And the past 30 days, there were 77 that sold with an average days of 54. That was 2 months. So this past week, we went up 1 month in average days on market. There's 220 on the market. We always see about 60% of those are new builds. And the average days on market of the houses sitting right now are at 100, and that's 3.5 months average. So Westfield has just a problem with that, and that's a lot of it's the new builds, but it really trickles into the resales. The resales, 3 or 4 years old, you're competing with new builds if your house is in that age group, and it's almost just difficult because the builders are doing everything they can to throw at the buyers to pick me, right? Zionsville 5 hit the market, 2 pended. Their average days on market was 31, so they're at 1 month for the past 7 days. The past 30 days, 27 sold, average of 48, so only 1.5 months. So Zionsville's kind of staying steady. They currently have 48 on the market. Those ones are at over 4 months average days on market. So the ones that are selling, the ones that aren't are sitting. So Zionsville is kind of an interesting, it used to be like we'd always talk about Zionsville, get your listings out there, but they're now starting to have houses set there as well. So the inventory is not moving as much in Zionsville anymore.
Westfield's an interesting example of Westfield versus Noblesville. I was telling you, like I used to think like 15 years ago that where Westfield is right now is where Noblesville would have been, right? Because at the time, like Noblesville was growing, and then it just kind of got stagnant there for a bit. But I think Noblesville is set up better to grow because we were talking about commercial properties and all this other stuff. Westfield built residential, and is now trying to backfill commercial, and it shows. And there is like all these people. And like, where do you go? And so Noblesville already has the infrastructure of the commercial, and so I just think they're primed to handle the infrastructure of growth better than the boom that kind of happened in Westfield. Westfield's done good with what they were given, but they were behind the 8 ball in commercial and retail.
They've
in my
got
opinion.
US 31 and 32 where they can put their commercial, and hopefully that'll.
But there were no real stops for it. You know what I mean? Like it was.
I wanted to use, also talking about as we go into the new year, some MIBOR numbers here that were given to me at our meeting for Northside. The average tenure right now of all agents with MIBOR, there's 8,900 realtors right now in MIBOR, is 6 years, with the average income of $58,000.
Wow.
So if you're in the business for 6 years, that's what they're showing. In the past, there's 2 years, agents that are in the business for about 2 years, they're making about $8,100 a year. So that's just something to be in this business is not easy.
So that's that's gross, not net also.
Right,
because I wonder because
correct.
That doesn't count what their MIBOR dues were and
any marketing or
And
anything
most
like
folks
that.
need to have a side hustle. You assume that they do of some sort.
Right, and that's difficult too if you're doing a side hustle and not doing realtor full time. 46% of all MIBOR agents had 0 sales. We have to realize that some of them are sucked in under teams and we can't see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Then they're the people in the business between 2010 and 2019 are doing 43% of the volume. So that's just kind of the agents that have been in that time period.
That's interesting data that I don't normally see. So
Yeah,
it's
it was
to hear
interesting. I got to get it from a board member, which these are kind of things I think everybody wants to know. What's going on around me? Where do I compare? But this was a really interesting one. In 2006, the average licensed agents did 6.6 transactions. In 2024, the sales agent did 2.6 on average.
Wow.
So those aren't very, I don't know, fun facts either. It's a difficult business, and people don't realize that. And if you're in the business, you're trying to make money. It's everybody always says they want to get into the business because it's make great money, have a great car, take trips, and have all the time in the world to do whatever I want. And all of that's wrong.
That's true. You're exactly right. Yeah, I think that how hard it was when I sold real estate part time, and there were some people who just weren't going to hire me because they didn't trust that I would be there all the time. That first 8 years when I was selling part time, and then when I went full time, it was hard. It was hard work, and I spent year 18 months afraid sometimes how I was going to pay my bills.
Yeah.
It's
We talked about it yesterday when we did something else, but the thing about it is with that, you've got to pay for your health insurance too. So a lot of times people are leaning on their spouses for part of it, and not everybody that's an agent has a spouse to help them with what's missing from just being a independent contractor, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's literally what I'm going to go do after this is I go talk to new agents at Tucker, and sometimes I take for granted like what has happened with me in this career and all this stuff, But I'll tell you this, like one of the biggest the two biggest problems, and we could do a whole podcast on this, but so first of all, financially, people don't get into it prepared, which sets them up for failure. And the other part is I work my ass off. I work more in this job than I've ever worked in my life. There are literally times where I work 80 hours in a week. Now, there's also times where I work 15. You know what I mean? But, like, I work significantly more than a regular W-2 job with my job. And I have to work when nobody's looking. And I have to work when other people aren't working. And I have to work when I'm sick. And, like, all these other things. And I don't think, I get the numbers are bad and everything.
I don't know that we can say they're bad. They just exist.
They're bad. They're bad. That is a high failure rate. But I would also argue how many of them actually really worked.
Right.
Can be honest and be like, this is the time I put in. I came to the office. I was disciplined. I did.
Went to training, yeah.
Yeah, I did an open house every Sunday for 18 months.
I did one twice.
Like,
you can do it from 12 to 2 and 3 to 5.
Oh, yeah, I used to do those.
Saturday was not a thing. When I started seeing Saturday, I did them Saturday and Sunday.
And nowadays, I have listings, you're like, people are doing 2.6. Like, we did 104, and, like, I can't get agents to just even want to hold houses open for me.
Yeah, that's true.
It's wild.
Well, I'm remembering before the recession of 08, 09, 2010, in those previous years to that, so many people were getting into real estate because the market was so hot.
Yeah.
And then some percentage, it may be 25% or more of the realtors, they just disappeared during that recession because they couldn't make any money.
It went down to 4,500 MyBor agents because I was new in 2008, and it was. These are the numbers I remember. There was 7,000, and by 2010 there was 4,500. That's what I remember. And everybody around me was like, "What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm doing pretty good. I just keep
You were
going."
just dumb enough to be new and not know any
Not
better,
a
right?
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to work hard at this, and
but
everybody around.
2019 to 2023, 24, a lot more people getting real estate licenses again because the market was hot and they wanted to get into it.
I think that's what helped me. I started in like 17, and so like I had to grind. And then the market got hot, so like I already knew better, like I knew what it was like.
You already worked up a head of steam, and you were charging.
Well,
down the road.
80% of agents, they say, don't make it past the second year.
Yeah, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But that's why we do the podcast. It's like we want to give people stats, and we want people to meet you and get have a knowledge base, and like, it's one of those things where there's so much out there to know, and when you don't know that much, like it impacts confidence, and then all of a sudden you're not getting sales, and you're like, is this for me? And then you're out of the business when when you don't feel alone and you can kind of see what the industry's like. And like, that's why we try to do this, is so people can have a, when you have people who are like doing a decent amount of business saying like, this is what the market feels like, I think it helps other people not feel as alone, So,
Very true.
Yep.
Very true.
Well, thank you for coming on. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
Kurt Meyer at talktotucker.com is pretty easy. And Kurt Meyer Real Estate on all the socials. You'll find me.
You want to throw your number out there?
Yes.
See how gutsy you are.
Right. 317-847-9258. So when you're not calling the mayor of Noblesville because he gives his cell phone number out, you can be texting me.
How long have you had that same phone number?
Oh, goodness. 25 years, maybe?
Yeah, that's awesome.
25 years.
And I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker. My number is 317-649-5122.
Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group, FC Tucker. My phone number is 317-201-2601.